Burning our way through hour number 2 here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Welcome back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is hour number 2 of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, download our free app, and stream all of our live local shows, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and I have made it a point to really search out guys that are always interested in expanding the sonic nature of the music and not wanking it, but rather combining that sonic expansion with the soul tradition of the great singer-songwriters and the ability to stretch out on the bandstand and have the courage to have your own individual voice. I've interviewed Randy Weston, Ahmad Jamal, Dr. Patrick Gleason. The list goes on and on and on, but we are in for a treat today. One of the most gifted keyboardists and pianists and arrangers and producers ever. Craig Doerge, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Geez, Jake, what an introduction. Thank you so much. Can I go now?
No, but listen, that was you can't because that was right off the top of my head.
It was wonderful, and thank you very much. It was fun to hear Second Degree in the background there while I was waiting for you to pick up.
And you know, that beginning piano solo, just solo, is haunting.
Well, yeah, it was the first cut on our first section album, and it was great fun to do. And, I have to smile a little bit when I think of the instrumentation used on that, because I used one of those old Roland Bach Space Echoes. At the end of the Moog solo, I throw the Moog itself into the Space Echo, and then you have to physically work it with two hands to get the thing to speed up and put a rap at the end of your notes. It was quite fun, but every night it would be completely different. So Russ Kunkel, our drummer, he'd have to really pay attention to make it all closed, correctly. I still have all my old gear, and in fact, I just got my Mini Moog back from the shop, and it sounds great. You can't beat that stuff. I heard a band on CBS just this morning, some young kids, and they had a new Roland axe, and they were playing a sort of a Moog solo at the end of the tune, and you could tell it was just one oscillator. It wasn't, it didn't have any kind of depth to it, and nothing against their song. They were a nice band, good kids, but it made you realize how remarkable the Mini Moog itself is, and why they go for $8,000 if you got an old one.
Craig, I wanted to ask you. Were you fast? Can you talk about the electronic or music concrete that you were into? I am fascinated with this idea of when classical music really began to percolate inside of you, especially more the avant-garde stuff, and then also ultimately stuff that, like for instance, Roger Kellaway did an album with Tom Scott, and Paul Beaver was.
And he had Kellaway is such a great player, and he had that wonderful. He had a hit. He won a Grammy for that record, and it had that great cello opening cut.
Right, come to the meadow. Yeah, no, But I mean, can you talk about your experiences dabbling in that electronic music and that new, and what classical music really sort of got you off?
Well, growing up, I took classical piano I've got two older brothers and a younger sister, and our parents made sure that all of us took piano lessons. And it just stuck with me a little more than the rest of my brothers and sisters, and I took it quite seriously. But I didn't want to spend the time learning classical music in a way that I could now sit down and read Chopin. And, I'm not a great reader. I wound up being an acoustic piano player, and that was my first love, Jake. And so the acoustic piano is what got what I was doing in my first studio bands with back down in Quantum Studios in Torrance, California. One of my first studio bands was me and Jim Keltner and Joe Osborne on bass and Larry Carlton guitar, and all those dates were just acoustic piano. I hadn't discovered the Fender Rhodes yet, hadn't discovered the Oberheim, the Mini Moog, any of this electronic stuff. But as many sessions as I was doing in the studio, I did realize that the keyboard scene was changing, and I went to UCLA and took a course in MIDI and electronics, because you could tell that you were going to have in your arsenal. It wasn't enough to play just acoustic piano. You needed the electronics too. And
Right.
as far as classical music goes, the older I get, the more classical I listen to, and I just think it's a preference. I'm a diehard jazz guy, and I love the section and the fusion music we did. But now I spend a lot of time listening to Ravel and Chopin, and because you feel it differently as you've become a little wiser in your life. And so it's a big influence in my composition now.
Did you get a chance to? I'm intoxicated with the idea. Did you ever hang with or come across Harry Partch?
I know, but David Lindley knew about Harry Partch, and Lindley's a dear friend, and he hipped both Judy and I. I'm married to Judy Henske, who's a wonderful singer. And Lindley hipped us to Harry Partch. I never got to see him live, which I had, but it was so inventive. But in the studio days, and when the section, along with about 12 other guys, and we were cutting all these records in L.A. from the 70s through the 80s. If you really needed advanced electronic work done on a track, you'd call Michael Boddicker or Ian Underwood, some of these guys who were specialized in plug-in, profit, very high-end electronic instruments.
But these were not. Let's make no mistake. These weren't plugins on Pro Tools. These were like real.
Oh no! We're talking the real instruments. When Jackson Browne and we went out and bought an emulator. The emulator only played 4 notes, and if you held the chord down too long, you could hear the notes stopping. Your nice little 5-note chord all of a sudden was 3 notes. It was like an advanced mellotron. The mellotron used to make a sound. It would go thunk as the note ran out, because you only had 30 seconds.
Right.
So you had better go to another chord or you're out of luck. These were hard, real instruments, and it was fun for the engineers, Jake, because the engineers had to really have their act together, because this was a whole new game. You're not micing an acoustic piano and drums. You're trying to get sounds out of this weird thing. It just gives you 2 outs in the back if you're lucky, and then they got to decide how to make this new instrument shine in the track.
I really want to talk. A while back I interviewed Paul Barrere from Little Feat, and he talked about. I think he went to the It Club. It wasn't the. It might have been the It Club, but there were these. He got to see Monk. Did you get a chance to see some of these cats that were like Monk?
I grew up on the greatest music, Jake, because Cleveland. When I grew up, I went to high school in Cleveland, Ohio. And in that time, in the late 50s, mid-60s, Cleveland was a serious jazz town.
Huge.
And I used to sneak out of my bedroom and put a ladder from the second story down onto the ground, and I literally would stuff my bed with pillows. I'd go out the window, across the roof of the breakfast room, down the ladder. I had a little stick Monza car that I'd just gotten. I was only 16. And I would push it out the driveway and go down I would pick up a friend who sometimes accompanied and other times didn't. But I would go down and hear jazz till late at night. And I heard Miles play. I got to meet Wynton Kelly in person because my piano teacher, Bill Gidney in Cleveland, introduced me to him. But there was so much jazz. I mean, in one night I heard James Moody. I heard Cannonball Adderley with Zavanu in his band. I heard Miles. And so I didn't know anything about rock and roll. At that time, I thought the Beatles, they were doing that early stuff. I didn't care for that. I was a complete jazzer. And in college, Jake, I had a DJ. I was a radio DJ. Once a week, I had a 1-hour show because I was the only kid in my freshman class who had a jazz collection.
What school was it?
Craig,
what school? What school?
Trinity College, Hartford,
This
Connecticut.
Is awesome. So you had it was during the
Trinity College, Hartford, Connecticut, in 65, 66, 60. I had my own radio show. And I could play anything I want, and I had Denny Zeitlin, and I had Davis, and I had, I was bringing people that they didn't know about these. Donald Byrd and his quintet, just the greatest records. And so that was my biggest influence. And every night at college, I just went and played piano. They had a stage, and I wound up with a band in college, and so I was almost propelled into being a professional musician through the opportunity in Cleveland to hear the greats.
Did you know? Obviously you got to know them very well in Southern California, but two cats that were from Cleveland were DeCaro and La Puma. Did you know those cats at that time?
No,
Yeah, Tom.
No, they were older than me.
They were older than you. They were in an accordion sextet.
Man.
But I want to talk to you Craig. This is important. I was born in '78. I caught the tail end of soul, meaning that feeling music before it got into Guitar Hero and a lot of other stuff. And I want you to talk about the time. The drummers, you'd go to these supper clubs and you'd see Don Patterson's organ trios, or you'd go, in Dayton, John Hendricks was playing with Art Tatum, but the drummers that would come in with Sonny Stitt, with Moody, those cats were not using the bass drums as the main timekeepers. They were dancing on the cymbals. And I want you to talk about their idea of time. How it helped you in your understanding of time, and how it helped your ears grow, because
Well, Elvin Jones, all musicians, drummers appreciate Elvin more than I can as a keyboard player and composer, but I could tell how amazing Elvin was in dissembling the measures so that you were not hearing what you would normally hear. It was not coming at it, you weren't getting a straight Philly Joe Jones approach to things. And then I grew up listening to some drummers, like I remember listening to Roland Kirk play in Cleveland. There was a club called the Club 100 on Euclid Avenue, and I'd go down here. Roland Kirk, it was there was a bar shaped like a train car. And they played up in the window, and it was just Roland Kirk, and he didn't have an organ player. It was just Roland playing his 3 saxophones at some times, and a drummer. That's all he needed.
Because he was from Columbus, Ohio. That's right. So it was just him and a drummer.
Yeah, sometimes him and a drummer, sometimes him and an organ player. The thing with Roland is he was so fun to listen to, it didn't matter. I think he did more work with just the organ player and no drummer than the drummer, because there wasn't a lot of room on the stage. But it's fun to listen to the different takes drummers put on stuff. My biggest influences as a player in the last 40 years, I guess, would be getting to play with Jeff Porcaro and Russ Kunkel and Jim Keltner, because these are the guys with whom I spent all day. For like 12 years, we'd be in the studio 4 sessions a day. So these guys. And, oddly enough, you're talking about jazz drumming. I met Keltner the first time. He was playing at the Lighthouse for Gabor Szabo. And all of a sudden, he's over in this little studio in Torrance with me and Larry Carlton and Osborne, and we're playing Fat Albert cartoons. We were hired by Richard Delvey, who was famous for starting a group called the Challengers, but he liked us as a band because we could really do a lot of tunes fast. And I remember on a break, Jake, I'd say, "Hey, Jim, what are you doing this for? I just saw you playing with Gabor Szabo." And Jim said, "Well, I see the writing on the wall." And he knew he said, "There's no money in jazz." Mm-hmm. And he was completely right. It didn't mean he didn't love jazz or wasn't going to play it ever again. But if you take a look at his oeuvre, he has not gone back to jazz per se. He really has become, a quintessential player in another field.
I agree. 100. Listen, I've done 3 interviews with Keltner, and the guy was playing with Bobby Hutcherson, Charles Lloyd. They used to sit in the front row of the Dragonwick. He was a jazz snob, but then it was like I found this album from '69 with Claire Fisher, and Keltner's on drums.
Yeah,
it's insane. He's playing this swinging, but then he realized that, as a profession, he also, did you know, I'm not sure. This was around, I guess you were at Trinity, but there was a music store that Keltner taught. He taught snare drum lessons. Lindley taught banjo, and Gary Foster taught clarinet.
Where, at Wallake's?
I forget now. I can't remember it's killing me.
Maybe Fred Wallake's in Hollywood.
It's not. No, it was in Santa Monica somewhere. But
I'll be damned.
Yeah, this is incredible stuff. So you were. Can you talk about in Connecticut, a Stone Jazz gig that you had, or what kind of experimental band?
Well, what I had in Connecticut was I started a band in the end of my freshman year called Duchess and the Fabulous Flames. Oh. We couldn't call it the Famous Flames because of James Brown, but the group was a couple of black kids and a couple of Polish kids, none of them who went to Trinity College. They all lived in New Britain, Connecticut, and they were wonderful kids. They played great. and we had the shiny suits and thin ties, and we did soul music. And I was able to get this band, Duchess and the Fabulous Flames, on the college circuit. So we'd go play Dartmouth and Yale, and we'd get Trinity, whoever needed you on a weekend. And we would pile into my little Monza. I think we had 6 people in a car that seats 3. And we were paid $50 a piece a night, which was big money in those days.
How did you get, because this is interesting, John Shear, the great promoter, he started at his college, the music clubs there. I mean, how did you get on that?
Well, I guess I didn't really answer your question, Jake. What I'm trying to say is I didn't have time to go to any clubs in Hartford. I know Hartford had maybe one club. It wasn't like going to New York, or it wasn't a club scene in Chicago, L.A. So I'm not familiar with any clubs in Hartford that I could go to religiously because I still had to graduate from college, get some grades. But my weekends were taken up with the band.
Yeah, no, I know Wavy Gravy used to perform at a jazz club. This is earlier with Jackie Byard. I mean, this is how unbelievable.
Wavy Gravy. That's so.
Well, I mean, again, this was when he was Hugh Romney, but he was like riffing poetry.
Have you seen Hugh Romney's movie? Somebody sent me his movie. It's so fun.
I mean, as
a matter of fact, I sent it to my brother Keith because he had a girlfriend that was going to go live in an area very much near Hugh. And I thought they would get along.
Oh, my God. I mean,
he's just a wonderful guy.
When you were down playing, I had Danny on in hour 1. I played him an audio clip from my interview with Val Garay, and Val was talking about, just specifically about no dynamic range in pop music today. None. There's nothing. Zero. With singers. And I want to talk to you about, like, the fact that you were doing unamplified music with Carlton, who eventually wound up with the Crusaders, Keltner, who obviously was a jazzer at heart, but then obviously morphed into a studio player. You guys both were great live players. And I think Osborne you said as well. I mean, how did you learn about dynamics, Craig? I mean, on the bandstand or in the studio?
Well, I'll tell you what and those group of players plus these other 12 or so that were the core. I mean, about 18 guys total. You got two, 3 keyboard guys, 2, 3 guitar guys, 2, 3 drummers, etc. This small group that was working. What was so wonderful for us was that we were given the opportunity to flesh out good artists' songs. And these artists had to be good enough to get signed to big deals at Warner Brothers or Capitol Columbia. And we're going in, when we're working with Crosby, Nash, or with Jackson Browne, they're coming in with a real song. And so, I mean, you have a chance to play Rock Me on the Water. You are going to invent a kind of different dynamic and a way of playing with each other that supports that song. And as it turns out, over time, that becomes more germane to your makeup than jazz songs, which are much more geared just to soloing. So you might have a good head on a jazz tune, but if it's like a Coltrane tune, it could go on for 20 minutes. So we're making records in the studio that cost a lot of money, and so people, it's a whole different mindset. But I wouldn't trade it because much as I love jazz, I love the idea of composition and songs even more. It's very difficult. I think that's what's been hard for jazz is to find compositions that are worthy of Tad Dameron or Claire Fisher or the great or Watermelon Man. I mean, you're not finding some of the Cannonball Adderley, the great stuff where you listen to Kind of Blue and you wonder how come we're not hearing anything like that.
You wonder also about whether cats now. People start with Kind of Blue, but if they should go back farther, if they don't go back far enough anymore in the
well, I think they're caught, in a kind of double-edged sword. They want to be contemporary too, so the young jazz cats got to do something to stand out and make a mark. I think it's similar in some ways to like young classical musicians now, where it's not enough to just be a great violin player. You you got to look really great and wear a short skirt and have a real good public self-image and all that stuff too.
Right. That's why I love the section, because you guys all are just like, beards or, crazy hair, and you guys have monster chops. farthest thing from because that's it. I mean,
I don't know. We look pretty square except for Leland.
And he's a square. He's about as
we
square.
were just in Washington there doing that honors thing, and it was so fun, the four of us, to do that. It was an honor to be asked, and we had a great time doing it. But I looked around; we all looked pretty, regular, except for Leland.
And he's
doing his ZZ Top thing.
Yeah, he's straight ahead though, man.
He's straight ahead.
Yeah, he's straight ahead cat.
And I have a picture of him without the beard and the long hair.
Oh, I need to see that immediately. What I wanted, if you could talk even because I actually asked you about the question about dynamics, and the idea of unamplified versus, by the time you did Forward Motion, you had the Fender Rhodes, you had the Moog, you had everything plugged in. Mm-hmm. Do you how much credibility do you give to the idea that the fact that you guys were able to work through the period of acoustic, when it was not amplified,
right,
through electric, that's how you understood
that? You're asking the Holy Grail as a question there.
Yeah.
There's I cannot begin to tell you, Jake, why a drum, a bass, a piano, and a guitar, which is all the section is,
mm-hmm.
Russ, Leland, myself, and Danny, why when we play, it turns into some kind of one instrument idea. It's not, and no one else plays like that, and it's what made the section. But you're in the studio all the time working records with other groups of players, and could this happen with them? Well, we didn't. It didn't happen that way with us. It really hit us, strong enough that we went out and rented this space where we'd go to every night and just play. But the dynamics you're talking about come from that, so that when the band, everybody can play a note, and the dynamic will be the same. It's just. It'll be incredibly soft, and then it grows, and we're playing as kind of one animal, and that's the magic of it. And you don't even think about it when it's good and it's right, and you're making, the music the best you can. It's very difficult to quantify.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that's another issue with music today, is that we live in everything in our world is quantified. Everything has to.
Yeah, as you said earlier, Jake, it says all Pro Tool. It goes into here. I've been on dates, where I'm going to do a piano overdub, and I play 8 bars of the thing, and then I'm ready to keep going, and the producer stops. He said, that's all I need. I'll just duplicate the 8. Or that kind of thing. And of course, it happens with drummers even more. Just say, I'll just take a loop.
And you listen to stuff that. Skip Scarborough and Creed Taylor, they let those guys stretch out. I can't imagine as a spiritual musician to be cut off after 8 bars, just so frustrating.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I haven't had it happen where they actually comb it, but they would tell me that, give us 4, that's enough.
Right.
But, and if you go to a music store now, you can see this. You walk down the aisles of a music store, and Roland's selling these little boxes, and Yamaha too. They're just little boxes where a kid pushes a button and he gets 8 bars of a disco beat or a rap beat or whatever he thinks he's going to make that day. And I don't consider that myself as making music, and but that's a whole side issue.
No, it's a word. I mean, I guess
the idea that DJs now can make $50,000 at a concert is beyond me.
Right? No. I mean, and I want you to talk to cats all over the world who are looking to detach and unplug from the saturation of YouTube. And what would be your advice to them? Because it's not about carping about where we are. It's about how to really continue the cycle of authentic music.
Right. And I from what I'm encouraged. I think that kids are trying to do that. I see more and more groups of kids where I really like the instrumentation. The bands are cut back. They're not coming on. They're not trying to do big, giant 12-piece disco stuff. It's not pit bull music. I see bands that are really, late at night on these, whether it's Carson Daly or some weird show or Channel 24 late at night. I'll see a group of kids, and they're trying, they're doing it, and I think they might even go as far as to discover people like Gillian Welch and Dave Rollins, and you hear some stuff in person, and you go, that's it.
Interesting.
So,
I
think
also, just in general, I mean, the propensity of you to, when you, after the Flame, the soul the R&B band that you had, did you have?
I wish you could see that picture, Jake. We all had the shiny suits, the thin ties. I had the old style Wurlitzer on concrete blocks.
Oh my God!
We all had to stand up.
Oh.
We had to stand up, and we did steps while we played.
I mean, were you amplified?
We were playing Going to the Chapel, and we were picked as the band. We went in Hartford, at the Hartford Auditorium, we were chosen to be the backup band for Dionne Warwick. She came through town, and she was doing her big songs, that Bacharach had written. And we were just terrified because, we're doing soul tunes. This stuff, anyone who had a heart, it was like asking us to play Beethoven's Fifth.
No, I mean but see, that's how the music grew. Is how
the music grew, for sure.
I love it. Well, we have a game on this program called Name That Song. I want you to take a listen to this song, and then we'll come back and break it down, okay?
Okay.
She creaked down the lane as sane as you make her. Rake held proudly in her hand, loudly singing her song to you. She puffs on her old corn pipe, working on the dusty heat. Her feet swing burn the rubbish, so high and mighty on her throne. Her bony hound by her side, gone with the rush of time. The Eureka Springs garbage lady shall ride no more. She's a school teacher from Dakota, diploma in her shack, back with the folks at home. She's in love with.
All right, I don't know when the last time you heard that.
Man, you're a mean guy. That is so diabolical to hear that. That's the Eureka Springs Garbage Lady from the GTOs, one of the very first things I ever wrote with Lowell George as a co-writer and Miss Christine. Yeah, and that's a Frank Zappa production. God, I can't believe that, Jake. I was the MD for the GTOs. And I couldn't have been more square at the time, really short hair, living in Laurel Canyon for just a month. And Herb Cohen, who used to manage Buckley and Zappa,
Sure.
and my wife Judy, he has me be the MD for these 8 girls that come up into my little house. And I rehearse them every day. And our first big show was down at the Shrine Auditorium, and the opening act was Wild Man Fisher.
Oh, my. Oh.
And he played the merry-go-round on, I'm not kidding you, his instrument was a folded piece of cardboard you get from when your shirt's dry cleaned.
Yep.
You turn it out, and he'd fold it in half, and he would get to the mic and sing, merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. The audience loved it, and we were the next act, and all the girls jumped out of cardboard boxes, and I was playing with Zappa's band, Jim Black and some Carl. We were just a trio.
Don Preston, maybe?
Yeah, and then the final act was Alice Cooper. I can't believe you unearthed that old thing.
I mean, it's just you just do a little woodshedding, a little research. I mean, to me, this is all about.
Boy, I forgot how terribly they sang.
I mean, no, that's what I'm trying to get at. You had, I mean, how could you gauge that these girls were ready?
Well, because it's Zappa produced it, and remember, you have to remember how great Zappa was at some time. He produced something that even Captain Beefheart was astonished by. He produced an album for Beefheart, and it came time to do the vocals. Beefheart goes out, from the control room, goes out into the main room, stands in front of his mic, puts his earphones on, and tells Frank that he's ready to do his vocals. And Frank says, "Take your earphones off." And he wouldn't let him wear earphones. He just pointed to him to give him a rough idea of when the track started. and then Beefheart sang.
Wow.
And they just won it. It was just off. But he liked that, and so he obviously liked something. He liked the GTOs. It was just an experiment for him.
Dude, I got to tell you, my brain is. I mean, I was like, this is total permanent damage. I mean,
it is permanent damage, you know. And if you found that, Jake, you might have the cover, because the cover was really elaborate. I mean, that's an expensive production.
That
they
album,
you know where they liked it? It sold well in parts of Germany and Scandinavia.
Oh, I bet if I look up that record, it's a high dollar record. I've never seen it. I was like, this is like Doerge pre studio.
No.
I mean,
I blame it on Lowell George, but it was a co-write.
You want to talk about Lowell was a character as well. I mean, not just a character, but a beautiful soul as well.
Yeah. No, you know, the girls in the GTOs were really sweet. I thought they were okay. I liked them. They were kind of nuts, and then one of them went on to become very famously nuts, Miss Pamela. But
when did you meet Judy? When did you meet your wife? I was
I met Judy when I was still in college. She was playing at a 2,500 seat theater in Cleveland called Le Cave. It was a very famous folk club in Cleveland. She had just been in Newsweek and Time magazine. She was very hot at the time. She and Judy Collins were the two reigning folk queens at the time, and she needed a piano player, and somebody gave her my name, and I substituted in the club with her for one night in my junior year of college, and then the next summer I went on the road with her.
That's beautiful. I mean, I got to.
I was just knocked out right away by what she could do. And then within a year and a half, we were out touring on road. And then I came to L.A. instead of New York, Jake, because it was easier to be poor in L.A. because it's warm than cold in New York. You know, it wasn't a hard choice. I had to drive.
Right.
Yeah, I literally had one of those, you pay the gas, and here's a car. It'll get you to the West Coast.
Right.
So I did what everybody else does. I came out with nothing. My family was very much against me doing this because I had a college degree. I was supposed to be working in New York in a bank somewhere. So, but this is a story you've heard before from lots of musicians.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. You were, your family was pushing you for materialism, and you were searching for the spirit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Well, it's not so much materialism. They were pushing me for what they knew. They understood the world of business and finance, and they understood the safety and propriety of it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I want to go to L.A. and play rock and roll.
And they're like, you're out of your mind, Doerge.
Yeah, no. They fully expected it was a phase, and I'd be home in a week or two. But downstream, when I got to play Blossom Center years on, and Mom and Dad got a motorcycle escort from the gig back to their place, all was forgiven. Your parents just want you to be okay.
I know. No, you're 100%. I mean, I do like. I mean, spirit is the currency, and more so now than ever before. I have to say that when you were performing this, they call it art rock. This permanent damage GTO stuff. That's what they refer.
Are you serious, Jacob? They actually put that in a category now just because it's weird.
Listen, genres have destroyed music as well. But we don't even need to get into that.
Yeah, but I mean that means I guess yeah.
I mean, this is the war. But I mean, what I'm trying to get at today is like I talk to jazzers that go to China for 6 months for a gig, and it's weird because they're swinging and they look up and cats are looking at their iPhones. They're not necessarily really locked into the music, and I'm trying to listen to the permanent damage for about 5 minutes, and my brain is kind of altered, and I'm saying, what was the audience reactions to some of that stuff? I mean, were you even...
Well, you had to see them because you've got 8 girls all dressed differently, all very young, all very weird with, I mean, it was like an art act. If I could think of the name of that famous New York artist who was...
Warhol.
Performance art. Andy
Warhol.
Well, I don't know. Well, he would certainly know about it, but there have been a couple of female acts that did that on their own.
I'd love to know who they are.
Performance art. And that's how you had to see the GTOs. But I think they broke up, pretty quick because Zappa was, he went on to other stuff.
Did you do you remember the first time that you met Leland Sklar? Was he in Wolfgang at the time? Do you know how you ran into
I
him?
think Leland and I first met when I was asked to come in and play on Rock Me on the Water. Jackson Browne had tried it with a couple other piano players, and they wanted to try a new way, and that was the first date I did with Jackson, and I think it's the first session I played with Russ and Lee.
Wow.
And we felt very good about it, and I think that's when we first, hooked up. I'm always surprised at Leland's roots, through Wolfgang. He goes back into L.A., way further than I do. I think I'm going back to Quantum and the Carl Osborne days, because I did play some cuts with, Carol Kay and Hal Blaine. And because of Judy, Jake, I remember you talking about hearing guys playing clubs. I used to go hear Don Randy play with his trio at the cafe on Crescent Heights and Sunset Boulevard. Whenever he wasn't in the studio with the Wrecking Crew, and I hadn't started to get a reputation yet, I'd go down there. He would come in about 12 o'clock at night, and the place was completely empty until he arrived. Then it was completely full. And I remember Don said, because he was making nothing but money for this club, he said, well, maybe I'll do this. And he went and started the Baked Potato. He bought that room, said, I'm going to play. He started out, he played every night. Then he got it down to 3 nights a week.
This is phenomenal. You're blowing. There's so much going. I guess going back to that Jackson Browne session, was it for you guys? It felt good, but Lee I was transcribing one of my interviews with Lee, and he was talking about in today's world, you get a female singer who wants to do 30 takes of the same vocal, and then they're going to bring in a second engineer and ghost some of the voice and this, that. And Lee's like, when I was doing work with Linda Ronstadt like you did, or James or Jackson, he goes, those guys, that was their gig. They'd come in maybe 1 or 2 takes behind the mic, and they got it. And
that's right. I especially on a record like The Pretender, which I think is one of Jackson's very best records. John Landau, the manager for Springsteen,
sure.
He produced that record. He had been writing for Rolling Stone, and he became friends with Jackson, and then all of a sudden he's producing The Pretender, which was a tough period in Jackson's personal life, but he had this body of work that was just wonderful, terrific songs. And Landau told him, look, you just go in this room with glass doors and you sing live, and just let Lindley and Porcaro and Craig and Glob play. That was the band. And all those tracks are live. They're just going down one take. If Jackson fixed anything, he might fix a word or a note. But Landau just got magic out of the idea that this singer knows this song and he's ready to sing it. So those sessions are always more fun than when you go in and the producer is just, as Leland says, just getting ready to put down tracks so that they can spend ad infinitum putting together, building a lead vocal.
Right, and it seems to me like any of the resources or budgeting is being sourced out to people to put it through all this,
No, and you know what you lose in that when Jackson sings
humanity.
The Fuse, when you hear the Fuse on The Pretender, we're playing off Jackson's lead.
Exactly.
You can hear the interplay, which is all because of the energy coming from the writer. So those sessions are the best.
I have been waiting to play this track of music for Craig Doerge for probably 3 years. I play it for my daughters as much as I can. Let's listen to it, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Great, Jake.
I just want to be clear, that was you the whole time, right? I mean,
yeah,
you tell me, so you're playing the Fender Rhodes, and then you switch over to
Switching over to the Mini Moog, and I had a phase shifter as well. I've still got that Maestro phase shifter.
Please break that out. I mean, this is the.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is this. I've talked to all the cats in the section, and now I get a chance to talk to you. Korchmar reiterated today how absolutely petrified and quite frankly uncomfortable he was opening for McLaughlin, just because he knew he was not that kind of player. And Lee can play that stuff, but Russ can do it.
I know what Danny is saying. Believe me, I was in the same boat.
Well,
no,
I want to ask my question. My question,
okay.
I really feel okay. Now you can be humble about it. Out of all the cats, you're the one that seemed to me when I listened to that record, and believe me, it's not a comping record, but there's clearly Mahavishnu influences on that Forward Motion record,
sure.
But I said, if out of all those cats that would feel comfortable to play and stretch out. Because what Danny was saying was, I don't want to just wank my guitar for 16 minutes. So, but I feel like if there was one cat that could stretch, it would be Doerge. And I just want you to talk about not so much Jan Hammer, but the idea of that experience for you, because all those guys talked about in this section, all your comrades, chins on the ground. They were just in awe of the whole thing. And yet, you know what? Billy Cobham came and found Lee and said, hey, you know, Stanley Clark's talking too much on my Spectrum album. I want you to be my bass player on that album. Obviously, there was mutual respect, but I just felt like out of all the cats, when I listened to that album, you're the most authentic jazzer. But you riff on that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the comment, and I certainly have a great affinity for what we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember the section as a band. I love being able to stretch, and I will always go for it. What made the section unique is that at the time we were making that music, Jake, we were trying to play more than we knew how to play. At the same time, you had old jazz guys trying to be commercial, playing less than they knew how to play, hoping to stick it in a new age record bin.
Wow.
And I never liked that idea. I always thought the integrity was in let it out there, and if it means your chin's on the floor in fear, that means we're doing it right. And to stretch out. And when you're listening, if my bottom is Cooch, who's probably one of the best rhythm guitar players ever, and Russell and Lee are on bass and drums, what am I worried about? You know what a luxury it is to have that underneath. So I know no matter where I take this, I'm going to be in sync with these guys, and they're like, it's like being on a trapeze with this great net below you.
I've interviewed everyone from that iteration of Mahavishnu. I've now interviewed everybody from the section. That Forward Motion album is much more palatable for me, even though I love the Mahavishnu guys and I love them.
Oh, they're terrific.
They're all beautiful people. It's just to me, the music that you guys were working on, and quite frankly are going to be going back into the studio in April of this year. Who knows what's going to come out? It's like, this to me is like, whatever it is. Can you just keep going on this? I love what you just said. You were playing more than you knew. Can you talk more about that evolution, how it helped you ultimately become?
Well, I think that the audiences that we played for, even though an awful lot of them, because we used to open for James Taylor and would open for Jackson Browne and for Crosby, Stills and Nash. And, of course, those people had bought tickets primarily to hear the lead act.
Right.
And so, their eyes were like wide open watching us going, what the hell is this? They haven't seen that very often. But they could identify with the commitment and the sincerity with which everybody approached every song and just left it there on the stage. So, I think that's the best part of what we brought to the table. And as it got more involved, towards the end, our third album, we did a thing called Moon Over Fontana, a composition of mine. I remember because Judy is friends with, or was friends with Jack Nitzsche, and Jack Nitzsche did all the orchestrations for a lot of great records. He was Phil Spector's arranger.
Yeah, I've seen some. I saw some Chopin that he
Yeah, Jack Nitzsche, he's a monster.
Monster.
But, he never says anything good. He said that he liked Moon Over Fontana. He finally complimented one of my compositions that I felt so good. But at the same time, Russell was very worried about cutting the track because it's really hard. And we're going to get together in April and be ourselves as a band again. But I think all four of us are not thinking of doing stuff that is overly intricate, because I think we might have been slipping into that, as you say, the Mahavishnu idea, which was so much linear work that it takes away a bit from your ability to stretch individually.
Well, I can tell you that there's, Cooch is, I think that some of the stuff, it's going to be exciting, because I know, being originalists and very, very, very spiritual people, that you guys are going to definitely lean on your past stuff, but I actually am craving and believe that some really beautiful original stuff's going to come out of it as well, because you're all sort of from that authentic period. I just want to be very clear.
Oh, I do too. I've got stuff for the band that hasn't been touched yet, and I think Danny does too.
Oh, big time.
Has too. So when we get together, I think sparks are going to fly in a very good way. and it'll be hard to pinpoint exactly what the sound is going to be. We'll let that'll
And
be
that's the
dictated by
exciting
what
part.
we
And
do.
that's the exciting part.
Yeah.
Man. You know, I mean, here's the bottom line. You know, that Zappa with Mahavishnu, he would not close for them. He did not want to close for them. I think what you guys did, as far as beyond just being totally authentic. I mean, someone asked Dizzy Gillespie, what is jazz? And he said, it's the ability to express yourself on the bandstand in the moment with your peers, allowing you to express yourself truly. The past is gone. The future will never come. It's what's happening in the moment. That's why the section was, why there was such validity to what you were doing. But the only dude that could close, open and close for the Mahavishnu Orchestra, you want to take a guess? Solo act. There's only one cat, Billy Cobham said, that would close for them.
Who is that?
Taj Mahal. He could hold the audience.
Well, he is that soulful. That's right. He is so soulful he can. But yeah, I remember Billy Cobham really loved Same Old, which I thought was great because Billy Cobham would open every Mahavishnu show with the most amazing 10 bars or 10 minutes of drumming you ever heard, with a big gong, and then McLaughlin would start this phased guitar that would go around the arena, and Billy Cobham would do the longest fill you ever heard. It was just fabulous. But,
and it was like artwork. It was art. I mean,
it really was.
Yeah.
You know. But I loved it that he liked one of the most inside things we did was Same Old, which is I think just a group written song by the section. That it's very funky and fun.
You talk about your concept of like, for instance, when you guys go back and even though you're not sure of the music, can you talk about your concept of leadership, Craig? I mean, I know that you haven't.
We were very, I've thought on that, Jake, because almost everything in the first 3 albums, it was pretty much written by Danny and I. And I really think that Danny and I acted in some ways, I just sound arrogant because we didn't sell more than 60,000 records on each album, but we were kind of like John and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Danny would write something, and I'd go home and say, well, he wrote that, well, I'm going to write this. And we would like come into rehearsal every day. Danny and I would be coming in, throwing stuff back and forth at each other, and then sometimes the whole band would wind up writing something. But there was a very healthy competition between Danny and I, and which is very. You can hear it on the first album, and then through the last album. I mean, his "Suckers on Parade" is really swinging on the third album we did, and so and "My Magnetic Lady" was really swinging, and we had vocals on it too. It was just. I think the writing, in terms of leadership, there is no leadership. Everybody in the band is an equal. I mean, everybody has a say as to what's going to happen instrumentally. But the compositions did have a beginning and a form, and that usually came from myself or Danny. And then Russell started writing as well. It's not like the band. It's not Robbie Robertson coming in and saying, "Here it is, it's all done. You guys just got to play it."
Right, that I get it. I mean, it's sort of everyone has their own. You can be even more egotistical, but cats like Jackson or James, was it the idea that they enjoyed? Did they ever tell you, like, Doerge, I really like the space that you create within your notes? That's music too. I mean, was there something that sort of became, because I mean, a lot of that stuff, that was the era of concept albums, and also, and that's what Cooch said it as well. He said music is no longer emblematic of the culture of that we're in now. I mean, before you could listen to one of those concept albums and say, "This is my life. This is what my life is."
No, that's right.
And
no.
So, I mean, did you, if you had any wisdom for younger cats, I mean, aside from less is more or listen more, when you worked with some of those masters, what did you wind up doing nuance-wise that really made you and cemented you as one of these first call cats in the LA scene?
Well, you learn as you're playing your sessions on other people's songs, and you learn when you're working with Russ or Jeff Porcaro or Keltner, and if you have Lee on the bass versus Bob Glaub on the bass, you're going to get two completely different takes on the bass from Bob and Lee. So as a pianist and as a piano accompanier on a song, I would learn to work with that, and of course Lee and I, are very simpatico when we're in the studio. I mean, there's stuff that we did on old Paul Williams sessions and stuff with David Spinoza. If they wouldn't have an intro or they wouldn't have an ending, they'd just look out and say, "Craig, you and Lee, and Lee and I we'd just make it up, and it's like we're in each other's head. He skates what I do, so perfectly, and makes me sound better just from what he does. But that kind of thing, you develop that, through playing with other players, and it's very difficult to teach that. I've had kids say, well, teach me, how does a section play the way it does? Or why did you play this way on The Pretender?
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to quantify that or put that
because I mean, these. By the way, I finally got it here. I want to know melodies. My gut instinct is when you were dropping the ladder down from your second floor bedroom and stuffing with pillows and going out and seeing I just feel like melodies have always been bouncing around in your head, and I wanted you to talk about specifically, because this is more the toe tapping section tune that if I was at a live show with you guys opening for Mahavishnu, is the tune "Baby Lame."
Baby Lame.
Yeah,
you're looking. Yeah, you're looking at. They left the grob off on your album cover.
They did. Baby Lame. So take us through
Baby Lame, but play some. It's a cool cut.
Well, I mean, we don't have it queued up, but I wanted to ask you, dude, like, where did that melody? I mean, that is just.
I just love writing. I'm a composer as much as a player, Jake. I like writing. Songwriting has been as good to me as performing and playing by far, and I've written a lot, and I always am writing something. So I just like melodies. The fun part about that was doing all the solo in 7/4 time, because we hadn't done that before, and it was amazing how how the band just locked on that. It's a very cool piece. Well, I'm sure that's one of the first things we'll do when we get back together, just for fun, because it's a very simple melody. So is Rainbows a simple melody, but Rainbows, I wish I could have given it to Hubert Laws. Because it's a stoned, it's a hit flute melody.
It's a stoner. I mean, dude, honestly, what Billy Cobham said when he first started, because at first Mahavishnu was just John and Billy, and they just shedded for days and days. And what he realized was he was struggling. He didn't know odd meter music very well, and he struggled with his breathing, and he needed to work on those things. And pushing it into today's contemporary, like you said, you consider yourself, you are a great composer. I mean, you're a great player. Can you talk about something that you're still working on, whether it's as an entertainer, in your own technique, as just what are you still pushing yourself with? Because as I've learned on this journey, you guys are still learning.
Yeah, we are still learning, and I'm still writing a lot. I mean, the composing I'm doing now, I seem determined, and this is not unlike a lot of famous artists that I know, I seem determined to become more and more uncommercial.
Beautiful.
So it's just, I'm writing stuff that is very classically oriented, that I do with Judy, because Judy's a poet. So she'll hand me a sheaf of poetry that she's written, and within that stack of things will be 4 or 5 things that really grab me, that I say, well, this could be a song. And which is the way we've written a lot of things. And I'll go to the piano, and the song comes. And but it's not commercial. And I was thinking of that the other day, Jake, because I heard an old radio station. I heard somebody play Angel Baby, the original 45, back in the early 50s. No. And it's such a great little record, and it's just those 4 chords. And I thought, if you just took those 4 chords, that da 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 da, I mean, it's just the same 4 that the Brill Building was built on. And you could make like a tape loop of those chords and just add different rhythms and speeds to those 4 chords, and you could write, half of the pop songs that have been done. But it doesn't mean that they're the best pop songs. That's why I love the section, because we're willing to stretch the parameters a little bit.
Well, I just want to tell you, we just cooked for an hour here, and I hope Judy would be up for doing an interview too. I've been focused very heavily on the beat poetry of the 50s and into the 60s. I would love to have.
Now she's doing a lot of stuff now. Yeah, they just did a ballet over at the Broad Theater based on her old records. It was really something. In fact, it's in New York now at the Jeffrey Theater for 8 nights.
I just want to say it's a high honor to connect with you, man, and the knowledge that you are My show is not about preservation because I wasn't around for any of this stuff, but it is about promotion. And you guys are going to be, you guys are eloquent enough and articulate enough to promote it on my show, and you also are going to do it on the bandstand when you guys get back together to the section in April. And
well, you've been very fun to talk with, Jake, and I really appreciate the hour did fly by.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime. I told you it's fun. It'd be fun.
Yeah, nope,
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah.
So, well, you take care, and I look forward to listening to the rest of your shows.
All right, man. Love always, Craig. Take care, man.
Okay, you got it, Jake.
Cheers, brother.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Well, that's it. Another day on the Jake Feinberg Show. We wrap up January 2017. Happy Chinese New Year to Mike Roper, my engineer, and everybody else here on the Power Talk family. Heard from Danny Korchmar and Craig Doerge, half of the section. My hope is that Leland Sklar and Russ Kunkel will come on back to the program again. They're going back to the studio in April. It's going to be fun. I had a ball. Thanks again. We'll be back next week. Same place, same time. Peace.
Playing blues for quite a while. I've been around the world a few times, but I don't understand. I just like to play the blues. It's not all the money that I want. I just like to play the blues. And I like for everybody to get together and all of us play the blues. Let's have a good time. Because blues is where it's at. I'm telling you, I love it. I can't help but play it. So when you wake up in the morning,
You're a gig.
and ain't got no money, or no gig, whatever you call it, you ain't got nothing but the blues no way, baby. Or either your old lady gonna do yagging you and arguing with you, telling you once you get up and do something. And go to the steel mill, you know you're gonna see, and that's usually the blues too. So sometimes you really don't know what to do, and when you get worried, all you can do is reach and grab your harmonica and try to play the blues a little